And gives me such great pleasure. You all just heard a little bit of her a little earlier, blessing us all. But now you're going to hear Kris. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So let's start with taking a breath. Together, let's all breathe in and let it go, so that we can arrive in the here and now, because right here, this moment is where the beginning again happens. It's not tomorrow, not when everything is figured out, not when we feel ready, but right here and right now. Meister Eckhart said, "And suddenly you know it's time to start something new and trust the magic of beginnings." So to begin again, it's important that we let go of the myth of starting over, because there's something really heavy about that phrase, starting over. Like we failed or we've lost something, like we're back at the beginning in a way that somehow erases everything that came before. But what if that's not true? What if beginning again is not going backward, but actually it's the most spiritual, courageous, forward-moving act that we can take? Because in truth, we are not starting from scratch. We are starting from experience and wisdom, from everything that we have lived, loved, lost, learned, and survived. So today, I want to reframe this idea. You are not starting over. You are beginning again with awareness. Maya Angelou said, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide to not be reduced by them." This is the nature of our spiritual life. We understand that life is not static, it is creative, that we live in an expansive universe in which everything is in a constant state of change and movement. We are always in the process of becoming. Charles Fillmore from the Unity Religion said, "We are not bound by past thinking. We can renew our minds and therefore renew our lives." And yet, how often do we carry the past into the present? We can carry old identities. Oh, this is just who I am. This is the way that I've always been. We can carry old disappointments. That didn't work before. I tried that already. We can carry expectations. It should look like this. It shouldn't feel like that. And without realizing it, we are actually not actually living in the present. We're living in a recycled version of the past. And that's how we get stuck. It's not that we're really afraid of failure. It's afraid of feeling things that we have felt before that didn't feel comfortable and sometimes really hurt. So we're afraid of being disappointed again, of feeling rejected, of getting our hopes up and things not working out. So instead of beginning again, we hesitate or delay. We stay in what is familiar even when it's really uncomfortable. What a lot of people do not talk about in personal growth and in spirituality is that the dreams that are within us that are seeking to be expressed, we have to feel safe enough to create those dreams. We have to feel safe in our body to become something different or to birth something new into the world. The known always is going to feel safer than the unknown. But the truth is that life is trying to emerge within you, cannot come through an identity that belongs to your past. Something new requires space. One of the projects that our two communities are doing together is to donate unused clothes and towels and sheets and shoes and handbags. That's a spiritual act, because when we let go of what no longer serves us, we create space for something new to take that place. There's an old expression, the universe abhors a vacuum. In other words, you create a space and then it needs to be filled with something else. It can be filled with something new. The last time we did this, last year when we were collecting stuff, I came across this high-heeled patent leather lace-up boots that I had been carrying around for quite some time. I had not worn them in 20 years. But they were getting dragged from place to place, and I had to ask myself, what was I holding on to? I was holding on to that person in her late 20s and early 30s who had gotten out of a miserable divorce and had decided that she was going to let her freak flag fly. And I did a lot of dancing and a lot of late nights in New York City. And the freedom of reclaiming myself, reclaiming my femininity, was wrapped up in these boots. But the truth was, those qualities have been alive within me ever since, and the boots didn't have anything to do with it. And so they got put into a bag and thrown in the shed in the back. And I thought, wow, these are going to be for a church fundraiser. That really says something about how my life has changed. You got them, good. I'm glad. But it was the meaning that we place in things. But the truth is that I'm not that dancing diva that I was 20 years ago. And it was good for me to let that go, because in the newness of me that needed to be expressed had to happen through a different type of wardrobe, a different way of looking. And so I'm an author. I have written 3 books. My first book, Energy Healing, came out and it did well enough that they gave me another book contract. And my second book, Manifesting, came out and did and continues to do extremely well. I'm very, very, very proud of that. And so when the third opportunity came along, my editor asked me, well, what is it that you want to write? And I said, I want to write a love letter to all of the people in the world who have felt like misfits, who felt like they didn't belong, who were excluded in some kind of way, and let them know that their inherent brilliance and beauty and individuality is a gift. It is not a liability. And so I wrote, your difference is your strength. It was the best writing I've ever done. I was extremely vulnerable. I share stories in there about being bullied as a child and all of the ways that I was excluded and all of the things I needed to do to heal that so I could reclaim who I really am. And everything lined up, all systems a go. Everything fell into place, including the audiobook. It looked like it was going to be a big success. And it came out and there was crickets. And I was completely shocked by this because I knew the material was good and I knew there was an audience who needed to hear it. And my publisher doesn't look at success for the quality of the writing. Success comes down to how many have you sold? How much money have you made? And what I realized is that I went through a grieving process about that. I went through a period of disappointment and I stopped writing. So this sermon is as much for myself as it is for all of you, because I'm never up here to talk about what you should be doing. What I'm always talking about is what I need to be doing. And so I looked at that. And the moment I decided that I was proud of myself for what I had done and it was time to begin again, the very next day, I got an email sent through my website from a reader. And she said, I'm 63 years old and I've done every self-help book or course you can imagine. And when I read your book, Your Difference is Your Strength, I finally learned how to love myself the way I had wanted for decades. That, my friends, is my success. And so to begin again during spring is a really, really good time because spring is our spiritual teacher. This is why I love this season so much. Spring doesn't ask permission. It doesn't say, well, let me check if last year growing worked out. Spring just begins again. After the dormancy of winter, after what looks like stillness, life quietly prepares beneath the surface, and then, without apology, it blooms. The trees don't say, well, I bloomed last year and it didn't go well, so I'm going to sit this one out. Flowers don't say, I'll wait until I feel more confident. The daffodils don't say, well, I think the roses are prettier, so I'm going to sit this one out. They respond to an inner impulse within them, a timing, a readiness, a natural unfolding. And that same intelligence lives within you. We live in a modern world that does everything to separate ourselves from that universal intelligence, our connection with nature that lives within us, and yet it remains. Anais Nin said, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. That's one of my favorite quotes. For 15 years, I worked in social services, and for the last 6 or 7 of them, I was slowly dying. I wasn't meant to be there anymore. There were no other advantages to me being there, but I was terrified to do anything different, and I certainly didn't think I was going to become a healer and become self-employed doing that. That wasn't on the list. But I would look at that quote day after day and say, when, Kris, when are you going to take the risk to blossom? And so it's so nice to revisit something that was so important to me all those years ago and be able to say, I did it. I blossomed. And even when I have temporary respites where things feel like they're in a plateau, I learned to begin again. So let's talk about courage, because beginning again takes courage. And often we think of courage as being loud and dramatic. That's what's reflected in our entertainment. But there is a quiet courage that lives within each and every one of us. The courage to try again, to trust, to open, and to believe that we are worthy of more. Even when part of you says, but what if it doesn't work? Courage doesn't mean we don't feel fear. It means we don't let fear make our decisions. Fear is a primal part of us. Its job is to keep us safe and thus keep life the same. And so it's important not to ignore or squelch down our fear. It's important to respond to it with love. But at the same time, you're not going to put it in the driving seat. You don't let the alarm bells make the decisions for your life. Brené Brown said, you can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot have both. Now, there's a very good reason why we don't choose courage. It's because every single person in this room has gotten a message at some point in your life that says, stay in your lane. I don't have to know you personally, and I don't have to know anything about you. I know people. I know families. I know family constellations. I know school systems. I know entertainment. I know the collective consciousness. I know social media. And I see the messages over and over and over again of who do you think you are? Just stay in your lane. But here's something that I've learned in my own life. We don't actually need more motivation to begin again. We just need less attachment to who we've been. Because every time we say, I'm the kind of person who, or this always happens to me, we reinforce an identity that's no longer true. Begin again with the simple willingness to say, maybe, just maybe, that's not who I am anymore. And so we're going to do a little identity reset practice here today. So I invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable. And I'm going to ask you a question and give you an opportunity to sort of marinate on it. Who would I be today if I wasn't carrying yesterday? Who would I be today if I wasn't carrying yesterday? Who would you be? How would you move? What would you say yes to? What would you finally let go of? Please know you don't have to answer it perfectly. Just be open to possibility, to the intelligence within you and all around you. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. We often think beginning again has to be big, a big decision, a change, a leap, but spiritual life happens in micro beginnings. Sometimes it's quiet choices of choosing a new thought, responding differently to a circumstance, just taking one small step. Often for me, beginning again is usually about learning something new. Finding a resource that's leading me in the direction of where I want to go and beginning to take on that information. It can look like sending an email or taking a walk or having a conversation or giving yourself simply permission to be who you really are. You can think about a time in your life when something ended, and in that moment, it may have felt like loss, but something new eventually emerges. Maybe something that you couldn't have predicted, something that required you to become a slightly different version of yourself. This is the rhythm of life. Endings are often beginnings in disguise. And so it's important that we let go of any perfection around this. One of the biggest blocks is we've got to get it right. That was a big one for me. You don't have to get it right because you're not doing it alone. Your true identity within you is moving you forward. Life is asking you to be in relationship with it, to participate and engage. It's not about perfection. It's simply about being willing to participate. So I'd like to close with some affirmations, and if you'd like, you can repeat after me. I release the past with compassion.
Release the past with compassion.
I open to this moment with willingness.
I open to this moment with willingness.
I trust that life is unfolding through me.
I trust that life is unfolding through me.
I have the courage to begin again.
I have the courage to begin again.
And I am supported in all of this.
And I am supported in all of this.
And let's take a breath. Let it go. You are not behind, and you are not too late. You are not starting from nothing. You are standing at the threshold of everything you've learned and all of the ways that you have grown. And life is gently saying, please begin again. Thank you.